Writing titles, paragraphs are fine, but what about the stylish typographies that you see in some movie posters and various advertisements? In this video, we will discuss the concept of layer style to achieve Hollywood poster-like typographic effects. One of the remarkable properties of the layer, rather than the text layer, is the layer styles. Write a text, and press twice on the layer, not on the layer name, because it asks you to change the name of your text layer, but on the blank. Here is the layer style panel, which offers several options to vector layers. These options also work well on the text. It is through this panel that we personalize our typographies and create typographic effects, like an outline to your text, a color, a gradient, or a drop shadow. This panel consists of 12 tabs, each has its functions and options that we will simplify as best as possible. First, we have styles. There are indeed photo filters to improve a photo, for vector shapes and texts. Photoshop 2022 offers us style libraries. We have basic styles like the shade worn style. Natural, like sea style, bark, moss, marble, stone, etc. Fur, like bear style, rabbit, zebra, cheetah, etc. Fabrics, like jeans, cotton, etc. You can import other styles that you can download on various websites. We can say that these styles are textures. We also have what we call blending options, which are a set of parameters that allow you to blend your text with the background, such as opacity, background, blends modes. One of the rich functions of the layer style is the function bevel and emboss, which allows creating shadow and reflections bevels. As we can see in the small square, we have the choice of several types of bevels and stampings, and structure. Style, inner bevel, outer bevel, stroke emboss, etc. For example, we choose to emboss. You can also choose the display technique, smooth, chisel hard, or chisel soft. To fully understand these types of displays, you have to look at the difference that changes from one display choice to another. Direction, it is the direction of our effect on the text. We have the choice of either up or down. Choose up. Depth, this is the depth of our structure. Size, this is the exact size of the stamping, or rather the effect. If we increase it too much, it may harm our effect, but we want something beautiful, so we reduce the size. Soften, simulates a slight blur in the contours of our stamping. We leave no blur, for our effect. In shading, the angle of shadow by degree and its elevation is available. For example, apply a 60-degree angle. For elevation, set 16 degrees. Choose the type of contour of the shading, called brilliant contour. We have several types with different shapes. It has no better than to test them and see the result. We also have the highlight mode. By default, it is on, and lighten blend mode. We can choose other modes for custom creations. Shadow mode, by default, it is on a multiply mode that is produced. Each of these functions has its opacity. At the end, we can set this setting as a default setting, or restore all settings. The beveling and emboss consist of a tab for the contour, and another for the texture, just below here. Check contour, and choose from the list a contour to apply. We have a whole outline list with different shapes. However, if we press the exact contour, we access the contour editor panel, which works at the same principle as the curve. In this way, I can create other contours. This applies to all contours that the Layer Style panel has. For texture, it is the same thing. The Texture tab, we offer several textures to apply to our texts. We also can manage the scale, that is to say, the size of our textures, like this. And manage the scale and depth, that is to say, the extent of our textures in our text. Here is a quick blind effect on a text. In conclusion, the bevel and emboss function, if we notice well, creates a cracking effect, metal, of an effect having a texture, etc. Remove the layer style by dragging the initials FX directly into the trash from below. We also change the color of our text to white for the next effect. Like this. Let us move on to another feature of layer styles. That is, the stroke. This function allows you to create a contour at the edge of your text. You can choose its size from this bar. The position of the contour, centered, on the outside, indoors, the blend mode, and opacity of my contour. The color of this small square brings us directly to the color selector panel. Be aware that the color is not only solid, but we have two other types of filling, and that is the gradient and patterns. Let us start with the filling by gradient. After we just select our type, we find all the editing options specific to the gradient that we have already addressed. As the gradient editor, we find the same library of gradients that we have already seen before: pink, red, orange. As an example, we choose the purple, then we take a slightly dark, or rather dark gradient. We regulate its opacity, and even its blending mode. Here is a perfect contour with a beautiful gradient. The pattern filling is very little used in contour. It has the options of the same pattern panel that we have already seen. Some features are repetitive in all layer style options, such as size, opacity, angle, blending mode, etc. To understand the functioning of these options, it is necessary at all costs to try each of them, without being afraid. In the layer styles, we have many shadow simulations, external or internal glows that we can perform to our text. Let us start with inner shadow. It creates a shadow inside our text. It consists of shadow structure. Blend mode. By default, it is checked on multiply, and which I think is the most perfect to simulate an inner shadow. A bar to manage opacity. And a circle to set the angle. Distance allows you to manage the distribution of the shadow within your text. The choke allows strengthening the shadow. And finally, the size. It is assigning a size to our internal shadow, and we see it clearly in the small gray square on our right. Just below, we have the additional effect. The quality of the shadow. The quality of our shadow lies in the type of contour, smooth, or not, with noise, or without. After the inner shadow, we can also add an inner glow. In the inner glow tab, we can create a thin light in the edges of our text. That is why we call it a glow. As adjustment, it consists of structure, we have blending mode, opacity bar, noise, and the color of our glow. Element, we have the choice of technique, if more sifted or precise. The source, if centered, or in the contours. Lose weight, which means the hardness of our glow. Finally, the size of our glow measured in pixels. And finally, managed its variation, in other words, its distribution. Let's go to the next tab. Satin is a kind of shade a little special. It is composed as adjustment, only of structure. Thus, as always, we have the fusion mode, opacity, angle, distance, size, and contour type, smooth or reverse function. We said earlier that there are several repetitive functions in Photoshop, like color overlay. Color overlay, this is similar to the solid color fill layer. It allows to color a text with a solid color with the color selector panel. As for setting, we have the merge mode to create color effects, and the opacity function. Inlay and gradient, just like the previous option, the gradient is similar to the gradient we know. It allows to color a text with a gradient color. We have the options of blending, colors of degrading. The type of how will be our degrade is this line, radial or other. Pattern overlay, this lets you add patterns to our text. It's basically similar to the pattern filler layer. Let us now return to our shadows and glows, but this time it is outside our text that the effects act. We have external glow, which allows adding a glow, but it is external, that is to say outside our text. Very convenient to turn on our text as a neon light text effect. For example, we choose a slightly lit color, like a futuristic pink, that is very fashionable these days. And whiten our glow a little bit, like this. After their external glow, now comes the external shadow, also called a shadow carried. Drop shadow, finally the last option of this remarkable and rich panel is to add an external shadow to our text, which makes it possible to add a volume to our text by a single click, like this. With its settings, you can create very advanced effects for your typography. And here is the example. Without too much delay we realized, in the end, this custom typography.